Hey Hotshots, Jess with Emotional Fire Academy here today to talk about changing your identity to reach big goals. Subscribe to the channel if you are someone who is ready to learn tactical mindfulness to get epic results in life. That's what we do here. This is a channel for people who want to do big things with life and really, make a difference in their own world, in the world of others, in the world at large. So, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Jess. And I've been thinking a lot about identity. I've been reading and identity keeps coming up in the last couple of weeks. Identity. What is identity? How do we use identity? And I want to share some of these thoughts today with you to give you some awareness so that you can reach big goals faster. Because this is one of the things I struggled with in the past is, getting to big goals, and I have had some sticking points and I've had some real successes. And looking back and kind of reflecting, I've realized it has a lot to do with identity. And we're going to get deeper into that today. So welcome. I took a really interesting brand marketing class last night. As my channel evolves as a brand and kind of figuring out who is Emotional Fire Academy. This is a journey that I am on myself. On the back end, the things that maybe you are or aren't seeing. I know I've been using a lot of different language on my channel because I'm trying on different brand identities. I'm figuring out, where we're going from here. After my departure from the HSP field, and talking about that for so long. But last night in the workshop, the wonderful facilitator was talking about, the archetypes. When you're crafting a brand identity, this isn't that much different than crafting your own identity, right? And there are the 12 Jungian archetypes based off of Carl Jung. Now, Carl Jung was amazing. I really admire him. And one of the quotes that I pulled explains archetypes. Archetypes are the living system of reactions and aptitudes that determine the individual's life in invisible ways. And, listening to these archetypes, and one is the hero, obviously, one is the rebel, one is the sage, the caregiver, the lover, there's 12 of them, and then picking the ones that most closely represented your brand, and then being consistent. And as I was listening to her, it really struck home. I'm like, wow, doing this more often in life, I think we do this by accident. When we're going after big goals, we do this by accident, right? We have to become the person who is able to achieve the goal. And in that way, we kind of incrementally do this, and then we look back and we're like, wow, I'm after achieving this goal or pursuing this thing that was so important to me. Wow, I've changed so much, And we look back and we're like, wow, I'm a different person now. This is the kind of the beauty that happens when we're inspired by a desire, right? That is, I think, it's an instinct. It's life's way of calling to us on this evolutionary journey of being like, come. It lures us with desire. It's like, you want to go climb this mountain? Awesome. And then in doing that, we evolve. We evolve as people. We expand, we grow, we assume a different identity and take on a different viewpoint and learn from that different perspective and identity, right? Because when we're in one identity, we can only really see things around us from a certain perspective. Whereas if we change that identity, right, we have a whole different perspective, right? And then we have a whole different palette of behaviors that we can get away with. I was thinking about, the rebel archetype can get away with a lot more than maybe the sage can, right? The sage archetype is more about knowledge and, just information. But the rebel, that's a very action-based archetype. And which ones are we embodying? The same thing when I talk about, don't play the victim. The victim archetype, the victim story, the victim, identity allows a very limited perspective, right? We actually limit ourselves in all these perspectives. We can only see certain things from each identity. And yeah, so when we assume then the hero, we have a much different perspective than the victim did. We can actually see things differently, see different resources, see solutions in front of us where we literally could not perceive them as the victim. Same thing with any of these other archetypes, changing your archetype, your identity, your perspective is literally going to change what you see in the outside reality, what you have access to, and how you can respond to it. Again, what can you get away with as this archetype? What is coming naturally to you as the archetype? Think about the caregiver archetype. What will you, if you take that on, if you're like, I am a nurturer, I'm a caregiver, how much easier is it for you then to be loving and caring to the people around you, right? Like it makes your goal easier if you adopt the right archetype, the right identity. I'm going to use those two words interchangeably for your goal. So, another great book that talks about this is The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman. I'll put the details in the description box below, which incidentally I'm also reading. So I wasn't kidding when I was saying identity keeps coming up, but Todd talks about how, he helps people craft identities. He calls them secret identities. And he works with celebrities, athletes who, making the jump from being an ordinary average person, which is an identity, the everyman, that's in itself an archetype, to a celebrity or to a star performer. That's a huge leap, between old and new self. That's a massive leap. You have to have a whole different attitude, a whole different set of behaviors, a whole different complexity to your emotional control to be able to perform at top levels, to be able to stand in front of a crowd of 10,000 people and do something masterfully without getting in your own head, right? And so he talks about how he helps people craft these identities, which are the new self. They're their old self. They're starting to move towards this goal, right? They're trying to be a better athlete. They're trying to be, a multi-platinum celebrity singer or whoever, they're aspiring to be. There's this leap from old to new self. And so he helps them craft the identity of new self so that they can, when they go to do that activity, step into that persona, that identity, that archetype, and perform at that level. And we can do this in our own lives. And, because these identities, the beautiful thing is we can either take time to craft them or we can just leap into them. We can just jump into them head first, heart first, and just embody them instantly. And this is how, in my own life, I have found this to be true. I've had a lot of success in life because I am a chameleon at my base. I really love experience. That's experiencing life, I think, is one of the most important things to me. And so I've allowed my identity to shift and change so many times. I've been a hermit. I lived in a van for 2 years. I've been the hero. I was the firefighter for 8 years. I was an athlete in high school. I was the just vicious athlete on the court. I played volleyball and I did that for, that was a different identity. Contrast to, I had 2 identities in high school. I had like the bookworm, like the academic where I was, studying and acing every test. And then I had the vicious athlete where I was like crushing people on the court. Those are 2 totally different identities that I maintained. And I think we do this, again, subconsciously. We're not even aware that we're doing these, these different identities. But what I could get away with on the court was a lot different than what I could get away with in the classroom as the bookworm, right? As the academic, as the perfect A student. Now being an entrepreneur, that's a much different identity from being an employee. Being an explorer, traveling the world. All of these different identities. And then, this most recently, this is why I moved away from being an HSP and stopped talking about it on my channel, because it was just an identity. It was one of these many identities that I have fully embodied. And when I get into something, I get into it. Like I'm not talking about, you can build an identity over time, or you can just jump in. You jump into the world. Because when you take on the new self, when you take on the new identity, that it makes it a lot easier to exist in the world that you want to exist in, right? So if I was, again, if I wanted to succeed on the volleyball court, I couldn't bring bookworm Jess onto the volleyball court. I couldn't overanalyze and overthink and, be very cerebral about volleyball. It's a much different identity. You're going to succeed in the world that you want to succeed in if you have the right identity. So if you're feeling things like self-doubt or imposter syndrome, that's just an indicator that you need to switch into the new identity. You have the wrong costume on. Think of it like costumes. You're putting on this new persona, this new costume, and you can jump into it instantly. People are heroes instantly. They suddenly are thrust into an emergency situation and they become a hero instantly. They do something very heroic because they stepped into that identity. Archetypes and identities are blueprints. They're kind of this pre-installed persona, right? The thought, that comes with the thoughts. Let's go back to the emotional fire triangle, because we always do. They're having the thoughts of, I can do this. What are the thoughts of a hero? I can do this. I'm going to make this happen. Doesn't matter what's happening. What's the attention of the hero? The attention of the hero is action-based, getting something done. What's the conditioning, the belief system of the hero? Again, very similar to the thoughts. I can do this. I'm invincible. I'm unstoppable. Those are the beliefs. And really believing that, you can step into that instantly. You can step into that instantly, just like you can instantly become a victim, and we do this again a lot of the time subconsciously. So why not try to do it consciously with awareness and say, right now I'm going to embody the caregiver. I'm going to turn into Mother Teresa and be loving and caring because that's what the situation demands of me. I once got on a bus, a Greyhound bus, and it was an overnight trip. I was intending to sleep on the bus the entire time because it was kind of a red-eye overnight bus trip. Unfortunately, when the bus driver got on the bus, she says to everyone, "This is my first time driving the bus. I don't know where any of the stops are. Let's hope and pray this goes well." That immediately triggered me. I stepped into hero. I went up to the front seat. I just rolled my eyes. I was like, here we go. Okay. I went up to the front seat. I sat next to her. I pulled out my smartphone. I was like, okay, I'm going to direct you the entire night to your stops, because I was like, it's easier for me to be hero than try and sleep, than stay in the persona of every man, every woman who's just back there, fingers crossed, this lady's going to figure it out. I stepped into hero and was like, I'm going to get this done because I know I can make this happen. So again, these are personas we can just jump into. And what happened, I guided this woman all night. When I got off the bus, the entire bus clapped. They clapped for me because they were relieved that I assumed the hero identity. Now, I don't do this every time. You don't have to do this every time. You're not obliged to do it. But if it feels right to you, if it feels good, if it feels like, wow, this is really who I am, I believe deep down this is who I am, it feels good to step into this new self and I assume this identity, if even temporarily. Because, right, you can always go back to the old self, to the old persona, every man. It's like Superman and Clark Kent. You can switch between the two of them. You can exclusively go to one and say, I'm going to be this. You want to be more fearless in life? Adopt the explorer or adopt the hero. And, this is a good way to eliminate certain character traits of the old self. And again, if you feel self-doubt or imposter syndrome while you're really working hard on a goal, a big goal, like being an entrepreneur, starting a family, being a partner, getting married, be a lover instead of a victim. That's a big differentiator for me, I found in my romantic relationships. Be the lover, right? The partner instead of the victim or the persecuted one, or, any of these other archetypes that aren't conducive to a loving, healthy, whole relationship. And when you do that, you're going to find more confidence, ease, and belonging, because you can, in that new identity, using that new archetype, you can stay in that world, the world of your goal. You can stay in it easier. If you keep popping out, if you keep feeling like things are hard and you're popping out, put on the right costume. Put on the right costume. That costume will come with a set of ingrained thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, behaviors. You know, these archetypes are archetypes for a reason, because we know them. We're familiar. We know they're like a story, really. They're a story, you know, and we're familiar with stories and the different characters of stories and how they act and behave, and we can step into those. So, and if we don't, it feels like an uphill battle. So make it easier on yourself. Assume the identity first. And again, let's touch on, manifestation really quickly. If that's something you're practicing, something you believe, you know, when they say living in the end, it's saying, adopt the identity first of someone who is a partner, a wife, a husband. Maintain that identity, and then reality will shift around you. And I've really found this to be true. My camera keeps falling over. I found this to be true. You know, you have to, again, to maintain success in the world that you're trying to get to, of your big goal, you know, as an entrepreneur, I have to act and behave and maintain the attitude, the identity, the persona of an entrepreneur. If I don't, if I slide back into employee, things won't get done. You know, things won't get done. Things won't move forward. I won't have great ideas. I'm just, you know, pounding things out like this is a job. I have to stay in entrepreneur to live in the entrepreneur world, to maintain that goal, and then to get to the next goal. You know, what's the next world beyond that? The desire is pulling you to get to, that you then get to explore a new identity. This is fun. To me, this is fun. I love this. I mean, this has been, you know, experientially some of the best parts of life, I think. And I've really enjoyed doing it. And I've found success doing that. You know, when I fully jumped into these identities and embodied them with my, you know, my mind, my soul, my heart, my gut, everything. I got everything on board with this identity. I had success, and you will too. Because then you can hang in that world, right? When you are that identity, you can hang in that world and you can maintain it. So I hope that was helpful. Leave a comment below. Let me know. And yeah, pick a new identity. Play with it. Try it on. You know, if you have a big goal in mind you want to accomplish, adopt the identity that will thrive in that environment, you know, and see what happens. Play with it. Have fun. Let me know what you found. I want to hear your outcomes of your experiment. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.